For centuries, humanity gazed into the night sky, wondering if we were alone. The day the sky answered, it was not with salvation but with a proclamation of horror. They came not as invaders, but as our gods, bearing a terrible truth. The beings who stepped from the stars called themselves the Founders, and they had returned to harvest their creation. Earth was not a cradle of life, but a field. Their ultimatum was clear: kneel and survive as cattle, or resist and be wiped out. 1 week was all they gave us. 1 week for humanity to decide its fate. Before we dive into this tale of cosmic horror, make sure to hit that subscribe button. When the alien vessels first appeared, they didn't descend with fire and fury. No, their arrival was eerily quiet. A haunting spectacle that felt more like a judgment than an invasion. Imagine looking up into the sky on what should have been an ordinary morning and seeing it blocked by massive, black obelisks, each one the size of a city. They floated silently, their surfaces shimmering like liquid obsidian, reflecting the light in ways that made them seem alive. There was no warning, no announcement. They simply were. Panic swept across the globe within hours. Cities descended into chaos as governments scrambled to respond. Fighter jets screamed across the skies, missiles locked and ready. But as the weapons fired, they simply vanished, dissolved mid-air, like water evaporating in the sun. Whatever defenses these crafts had, they were beyond anything humanity could comprehend. For 3 agonizing days, the ships hung there, unyielding and ominous. People gathered in churches, mosques, and temples, praying to their gods for protection. Others flocked to the streets, waving signs of welcome or protest, as if their voices could reach the silent behemoths above. And then the silence broke. It didn't come as a sound, but as a thought, an overwhelming presence in every mind on Earth, impossible to ignore. We are the Founders. You are our creation. The words were not spoken. They were delivered straight into the core of every human being, bypassing language, culture, and understanding. And with that one message, everything humanity thought it knew about its existence was upended. On the 4th day, the Founders revealed themselves. From the base of their hovering ships descended beams of light, like celestial stairways. And from those beams emerged figures that were both mesmerizing and terrifying. They stood nearly twice the height of a human, their forms elongated and unervingly symmetrical. Their skin was a pale, ashen gray that seemed to shift like smoke, and their eyes, oh, their eyes, glowed with an otherworldly brilliance, molten gold that seemed to pierce straight into the soul. Their movements were fluid, almost too perfect, like they were gliding rather than walking. One of them, taller than the rest and draped in a shimmering robe-like material that seemed to ripple with colors beyond the human spectrum, stepped forward. Its voice rang out, not in words but in thought, resonating in the minds of every person watching. You were created for a purpose. That purpose is now fulfilled. Surrender, and you will live under our dominion, sustained to serve us. Resist, and we shall erase you from existence. You have 1 week to decide. The proclamation was as simple as it was horrifying. The Founders claimed to be the architects of humanity, the originators of life itself. They explained that humanity was not an accident of nature or the design of divine beings, but a carefully cultivated crop, a resource meant to sustain their ancient race. They were the farmers, and humanity was their harvest. The week that followed was unlike anything the world had ever experienced. The Founders' ultimatum fractured humanity, splitting it into 2 irreconcilable factions. On one side were the Submissionists, those who believed survival was all that mattered. They accepted the Founders' proclamation as truth, proclaiming them as gods. These zealots burned libraries, dismantled monuments, and destroyed anything that represented human pride or independence. They began offering the weak, the elderly, and the infirm as sacrifices, hoping to appease their new masters. To them, humanity's continued existence, even as slaves, was worth any price. On the other side were the Resistors, those who refused to bow, who believed humanity's spirit was worth more than its survival. Underground militias formed almost overnight, stockpiling weapons, hacking communications, and seeking any vulnerability in the alien ships. Scientists worked day and night, desperately trying to decipher the Founders' technology, hoping for a miracle. But miracles didn't come. Across the globe, the fabric of society disintegrated. Riots broke out in the streets as neighbors turned against one another. Cities burned, their skies blackened with smoke. It was as if the Founders' ultimatum had opened a Pandora's box, revealing the ugliest truths about human nature. On the sixth day, the Founders made their move. Their ships descended over a small coastal town. Its name doesn't matter, because it no longer exists. Before the eyes of the world, they unleashed their harvest. Beams of light shot down from their vessels, bathing the town in an otherworldly glow. First, nothing happened. Then came the screams. The people caught in the beams began to wither, their bodies collapsing in on themselves as their life force was siphoned away. It wasn't just death, it was consumption. The Founders absorbed them, their ashen skin glowing faintly brighter with each soul extinguished. The demonstration was short, brutal, and impossible to forget. "Understand," they said, their collective voice shaking the minds of all who heard it. "This is mercy. Defiance will bring only suffering." By the seventh day, the world was a patchwork of ruins, cult strongholds, and fortified bunkers. The Founders' ultimatum loomed like a death knell, their ships descending once again to deliver the final judgment. The Submissionists knelt, heads bowed, offering themselves as willing servants. The Resistors prepared for one last stand, even knowing it was hopeless. In a desperate act of defiance, the remaining world powers launched their nuclear arsenals. Missiles streaked through the skies, aiming for the Founders' ships. For a moment, humanity dared to hope, but that hope was short-lived. The missiles never reached their targets. They disintegrated mid-air, undone by invisible barriers. The Founders were untouchable. Their retaliation was swift and devastating. Entire cities vanished in waves of silent destruction, leaving behind only glassy craters where millions had lived. The screams of the dying echoed in every survivor's mind, a psychic chorus of despair. When the dust settled, the Founders' harvest began in earnest. Those who had surrendered were herded into massive containment zones, vast, sprawling cities of servitude. Here, the weak and the old were culled regularly, their lives drained to sustain their alien overlords. The Resistors, or what little remained of them, fled into the wilderness. They became shadows, whispering tales of rebellion to frightened children, clinging to the hope that humanity's spirit might one day rise again. The Founders remained ever-present, their ships dark sentinels against the sunlit sky. Their message echoed in the minds of every survivor. "You are ours." And so, humanity was left to grapple with the horror of its existence. Were we truly nothing more than livestock, bred for a higher purpose we could never understand? Or were the Founders liars, cosmic predators spinning tales to justify their cruelty? In the end, the question didn't matter. What mattered was survival, whether as cattle or as something more. Would you have knelt? Would you have fought? The Founders gave us a choice, but perhaps the true horror was that there was never really a choice at all. And so, as we look to the skies, the shadow of their ships still looms. Are they watching, waiting, or simply biding their time until the next harvest? Perhaps, in the silence of the cosmos, they are already preparing. For us, for another world, for another crop. So I ask you again, if they came back tomorrow, what would you choose? Thank you for watching this chilling tale of humanity's darkest reckoning. If the story gripped you, terrified you, or made you question what's out there in the vastness of space, please consider subscribing to the channel. Your support helps us bring more tales of cosmic horror, supernatural mysteries, and unthinkable truths to life. Hit the like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and tell us, what would you do if the Founders returned? Until next time, keep watching the skies, because you never know who or what might be watching back.